You're listening to Pombo and Peter's Picks, the home of your favorite sports betting podcast, presented by The Daily Goat.
All right, Peter, now we're going to transition into baseball. We're going to bring on a special guest here. We're going to bring on Nate Olshan of Big Talk with Big Nate. How are we doing today, Nate?
I'm doing good, Jason. Doing good, Peter. Thank you guys for having me on. Ready to talk some baseball.
Awesome. Let's get right into it. So for this segment, we are going to look at the over-under totals, the divisional odd totals, and Nate is going to help us break it down. We're going to select over-under for each team in the National League. This week, we're going to be doing the National League, and next week, we're going to break down the American League. So all you fans of the National League out there, all people that like Nate, we're going to start off with them. So, Peter, let's start off in the National League Central.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so according to DraftKings, we're going to start off with the St. Louis Cardinals. Win total is 86.5. So we're going to start off with Peter, then we're going to go with Nate, then we'll do myself, and then we're going to keep it going until we finish the National League. Peter, what do you think for the Cardinals at 86.5 wins?
It's a hard over, best bet on the whole entire board. Arenado is going to at least give you 10 wins.
Nate, what do you think?
I don't think it's going to be much over 86.5, like good man Peter thinks, but I think it'll be a little bit over, maybe like 88, 89.
So you also agree with the over. I agree with you guys with the over. I think the Cardinals team is a little underrated. I like the addition of Arenado. And you look at that division as a whole, there's really not many other teams that scare me. If you're a Cardinals fan or you run the Cardinals. So I like the Cardinals over 86.5. I really do. I think that's a pretty solid bet. We're going to move on to the Cincinnati Reds. According to DraftKings, 82.5 wins. Peter, what do you like about the Reds?
So I like the hard over on the Cardinals, and the under has to hit on the Reds for this to happen. The wins have to go somewhere. And they lost Trevor Bauer, the best pitcher ever. So I think they're going to have a major regression. Sorry, Nate.
Yeah, you got jokes, Peter. You got jokes.
Nate, what do you think about the Cincinnati Reds? 82.5.
I'm going to go under that. I think that they're going to be in like the mid-70s, high 70s. Besides Luis Castillo, for as long as he's going to be there, I think he's going to be a trade deadline guy. Eugenio Suarez, Nick Castellanos. I don't see much on that team. Sonny Gray. Are you going to tell me Sonny Gray is going to have a third grade season? I don't see it happening. It's Sonny Gray. But, yeah, I'm going way under on this one.
Yeah, I agree with you here. I'm going to take the under. I think we're all in agreement now for the first two. I think the under is a pretty safe bet, if I'm being honest with you. I'm not in love with the Cincinnati Reds team either. Losing Trevor Bauer was expected, but filling the void is going to be difficult for that team. Moving on now to the Milwaukee Brewers. According to DraftKings, they are set at 82.5 wins.
I like their over. I like their pitching staff. I like their relief pitchers, Josh Hader, obviously. And they have a decent amount of talent on the hitting side. And 82.5 isn't that much, especially when you get it to later when they have the Pirates in that division.
Yeah, I'm gonna say over on that one. I like them as the second best team in that division. Christian Yelich is one of the best players in the league. He was almost a Met, actually. He really was almost a Met. They almost traded for him. No, yeah, I really like this Brewers team. As you said, Peter, they have a pretty decent pitching staff. Definitely over on them.
I'm going to agree again with you guys. I'm going to take the over for the Brewers at 82.5. So look, you do the math out. Are they going to finish above 500? I think they do. So I'm going to take the over in that category. Moving on now, the Chicago Cubs. According to DraftKings, they are set at 79.5 wins. Peter, what do you think?
It's a hard team to follow, but I have the under just because they lost a few of their pitchers. They lost John Lester. They got Jake Arrieta back, though, which is pretty huge. And they still have a bunch of talent like Chris Bryant and Anthony Rizzo, obviously. But I just think the Cardinals are just going to run away with it. And they're going to have to get a bunch of wins. So they're going to have to rack it up on bad teams like the Cubs. And David Ross, I think, is going to rebuild them. And I like him as a manager.
Nate?
Yeah, I'm going to go slightly over on this one. They still have a pretty decent lineup. They still have Kyle Hendricks. But other than that, they did lose a lot in the offseason. So they're definitely not a playoff team, but I'm going to go somewhere in the 80s for them.
So obviously they lost Theo Epstein in the offseason.
Yeah.
So now they have Jed Hoyer taking over down there in Chicago. You mentioned they lost some pieces. They absolutely did. They lost Schwarber, Lester, to name a couple. And I think the first month of the season is really going to dictate this total. if they start off really slow, really methodical, I think there's a scenario in which Chris Bryant gets dealt. And if Chris Bryant gets dealt, you take the under. And I'm going to take the under here, under 79.5. I think they're going to start off slow, and I don't think they're really going to be able to climb out of that hole. I really like the under in this scenario. They lost too much talent. I think they're in for a rebuild. Under 79.5. Moving on now for the last team in the NL Central, the Pittsburgh Pirates. Nate's Pittsburgh Pirates. According to DraftKings, they're at 59.5 wins. Peter, what do you think?
Pirates are an absolute trash organization. They should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. They're going to be probably the worst team. Not probably. They're definitely going to be the worst team. They dealt off all their pieces. And so Jameson Taillon's to the Yankees. Chris Archer went back to the Rays. They're dealing all their pieces away. They're obviously rebuilding, and I don't think they're going to sniff like 40 wins.
40?
Yeah, they're going to be a hard under.
Wow.
Nate, what do you think?
Oh, I'm going way over on this one, somewhere in the 70s. No,
really?
No. Hell no. I'm kidding. I'm going to go under on this one. A little bit under. I think somewhere in the 50s for sure. I don't think they're the worst team in the league. Your guys' Baltimore Orioles out in your division.
I agree.
Still got them. I'd say they're the worst organization in the history of sports. No, I'm going to go slightly under on this one.
I'm also going to go with the under here. Obviously, they've Ben Cherington now running things out in Pittsburgh, who I think is eventually going to build up in the right direction. But right now, they're rock bottom. I think they still have a long way to go. I'm going to take the under in that. All right, so we're now going to talk about the odds to win the division here. So according to DraftKings, the Cardinals are favored to win the division at plus 100. Second is the Reds at plus 325. Third is the Milwaukee Brewers at plus 385. Fourth is the Cubs plus 400. And then fifth is the Pirates at plus 5,000. Peter, who do you like to win the NL Central?
So I like the Pirates. No, I'm just kidding. So I like the Cardinals, as I said. I like their huge over at plus 100, but I like a value of the Cubs plus 400 because that lineup could be so dangerous. And I like a few of their pitchers on that team still.
Nate, who do you think wins the Central?
I think that it's going to be the Cardinals, but I think that the Brewers, I like that bet because I see the Brewers as potentially being a team that could really kind of weasel their way in there to being the top team in that division. But yeah, I definitely take the Cardinals win the Central.
Yeah, I agree with you. He did plus 100. I think they're the favorite, and they should be the favorite, and I think they will win the division. Best value, I like Milwaukee, like you, Nate, at plus 385. We're now going to transition to the National League West. So obviously, in my opinion, this is the most interesting division in baseball. I think there's a lot of star power there, and I think it's going to come down to the wire. Start off here with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Total is at 101.5. Peter, what do you like?
So I like the over on that because they're an absolute wagon. They're a super team. They should all be ashamed of themselves. So they have Urias, not a prospect, but he's been failing, but he could be their number 5. Trevor Bauer, obviously Cy Young winner. Walker Buehler, a great, not prospect anymore, but young pitcher. David Price, you know what he's done. And Clayton Kershaw, probably the best pitcher of our generation. And they have Mookie Betts, Cody Bellinger, just to name a few. That team's absolutely studded, loaded.
Nate, what do you feel about that one?
Yeah, I definitely would take the over on the Dodgers on that one. I think that they're going to be somewhere competing around maybe the 2001 Seattle Mariners for the most wins in the single season.
I'm going to agree with you guys here at the over a 101.5. The only thing that would really question it is if the Dodgers, them being so good, they're kind of just sleepwalking until the postseason. I don't think that's going to happen, but I think with a veteran team, it's a possibility. But I'm going to take the over at 101.5. Next, we're going to go to the San Diego Padres. Obviously, they've made quite a few moves this offseason. According to DraftKings, they're set at 94.5 wins. Peter, what do you think about the San Diego Padres?
I don't think they could do that because if they sleepwalk, the Padres are just going to override them. And I like the over on that as well. I think it's just going to be a 2-team race. But I like Tatis. I like all that young talent on that team. I think they're going to go far, but it's going to be really hard with the Dodgers in that division, unfortunately.
Nate?
Yeah, I like the over on this one for the Padres. I see the NL West having 2 100-win teams, but I think that the Padres could potentially come out there winning that division with what they've done in the offseason.
So we'll get into division winners after this for that specific division. I agree with you guys with the over. Look, the Padres, that team's exciting. They made a lot of great moves this offseason. Obviously, the Tatis extension got a lot of people in San Diego excited. And You know what? They're not going to bow down to the Dodgers. They're going to make a serious run at the division crown here. I like the over at over 94.5. Moving on now here to the San Francisco Giants. According to DraftKings, they are set at 75.5 wins. Peter, what do you like here?
So I'm going to say the same thing for the last three teams. So the Padres and Dodgers are going to absolutely feast on all of them, and the wins have to go somewhere. So I like not the huge under, but an under of 75.5.
Nate?
I like the over on the Giants. Like we saw what they did last year. They didn't really have a whole lot, but Yastrzemski came out of nowhere. I really would take the over on this team.
Yeah, you know what, Nate? I agree with you. I'm going to also take the over on the San Francisco Giants. I think that team, I think they're heading in the right direction. That division's, again, really, really tough, but I don't think it's totally out of the question for them to be fighting towards 500. I think they're probably going to lean between 77 to 80 wins. I think that division is going to be really, really tough next year, especially when San Francisco is getting better and better. And like you mentioned, Yastrzemski, he kind of came out of nowhere, like you said, and I think that could be a building block for the future. Who knows? San Francisco's not afraid to spend money. We've seen it a couple times now. A couple free agents end up there, and you have a 3-team race in the NL West. Moving on now here to the Arizona Diamondbacks. According to DraftKings, they're set at 74.5 wins. Peter, what do you think about the D-backs?
So like I said, the under, and the Padres and Dodgers are going to feast on them, and that's it.
Nate?
Oh, yeah, way under on this one. Way, way, way under on this one. I do not like a single thing on the Diamondbacks team.
Okay,
30 games under.
Oh, wow. All right. So
Oh,
Nate,
wow.
you think they're going to be really bad. I agree with you guys with the under here because, again, I really like the Dodgers, Padres, and I think the Giants are a little bit better than people anticipate. So I think they're going to be an under team. There's obviously a lot of uncertainty with that roster. The team really is in a rebuilding situation. I'm going to go with them for the under. Peter, Rockies now. According to DraftKings, they're set at 64.5 wins. What do you think?
So I like the under on that team too because they're an absolute disgrace. Dealing off Arenado, probably just to sign Trevor Story, which is an absolute disgrace. Hard under on that.
Nate?
I'll put it this way: the only money this team spent this entire offseason was giving the Cardinals $50 million to take Arenado off their team. They didn't make a single free agent move. I think this is the worst team in the history of sports after the Orioles. I'm taking the way under on this one, somewhere in the 20s.
20s?
No. 40s or 30s for sure. But they'll be the worst team in the league this year.
Yeah, you know what? Nate, I have to agree with you, and I know that everyone's talking about so I'm going to take the under here, under 64.5. Everyone's talking about how obviously they dealt off Arenado to pay Trevor Story. How expensive Trevor Story going to be? Like, I think he's going to cost a lot of money. Who's to say he wants to be there?
He's going to just
deal
walk.
him.
Yeah, he's not going to be there. They'll end up trading him probably by the deadline.
That's going to be crazy. I like the under in that scenario.
Yeah.
So now we're going to move to divisional odds here to win the division. So according to DraftKings, the Dodgers are favored at minus 250. Second is the Padres at plus 200. Third is the Giants, plus 4,000. Fourth and fifth is the Diamondbacks and the Rockies at plus 5,000. So who do we like, guys?
So
I'll start off with Peter.
I like the Dodgers minus 250 because I just think that's an absolute super team. But I like the value of the Padres plus 200. I don't see a Dodgers being a minus 250 favorite. I thought that was a little weird.
Nate?
Oh, I'm taking the Rockies all the way. No, I'm just kidding. The Padres. I feel like Bauer's going to really make or break that team, but I think that the Padres have a more consistent rotation, and the lineups are not equal, but they're comparable. So I like the Padres on this one, plus 200.
I'm going to pick the Dodgers to win the division at minus 250, but I wouldn't bet that. I really wouldn't. I think they're too heavily favored. I think the best value is with the Padres at plus 200 because you look at the rosters, and I know we're talking about how, in my opinion, those are the two best teams in the MLB, Dodgers and the Padres. So you can make a case for either of them. I think the Dodgers win the division, but if you're going to bet on this division, bet on the Padres. All right, now we're going to transition to the National League East. Very anticipated.
Nate's favorite division.
Nate's favorite division. Yeah. And this division, in my opinion, is a competitive division. I think you can make an argument for a couple different teams. We're going to hit on it. All right, we're going to start off with the Atlanta Braves. According to DraftKings, they're set at 91.5 wins. Peter, what do you like for the Braves?
I like the under, a slight under on that. They signed Marcell Ozuna, but I think 91.5 is a really high number, especially when you have the Mets, Nationals, and Phillies in the division. So I like the under.
Nate?
Yeah, I think this will be the most competitive division in the MLB this year. But I like the under on this one for the Braves. I just don't really see them getting above 90. that much. I think there's too many question marks in their rotation and in the bullpen.
We're all in agreement here. I think this division is going to be very competitive, and I think that's the case. I'm going to go with the under here. I think the Braves are a really good team, but to get to 92 wins seems like a stretch to me. I find them more in the range of 87 to 89. I'm going to take the under here. We're going to move on now. We're going to save the Mets for last. We're going to move on to the Washington Nationals. According to DraftKings, they're set at 84.5 wins. Peter, what do you think for the Nationals?
So Nationals, I like the over. I think they still have a lot of talent on the team. Strasburg, Max Scherzer, obviously. And they got John Lester. I know he's a little washed, but he's not that bad. And I love Juan Soto. He's an absolute stud in the making. So I like that over of 84.5.
Nate?
Yeah, Steven Strasburg, Max Scherzer, Patrick Corbin, John Lester. This team still has a pretty stacked rotation. Take the slight over on this one, somewhere around 87, 86.
So I'm going to agree with you guys here. I'm going to go with the over for the Nationals. I think, Nate, you were the one that mentioned Steven Strasburg.
Yeah.
I think he's a candidate to win the Cy Young. I really do. Now I'm going to go with the over here, slight over. I'm going to say maybe 86 wins. So I'm going to go with the over here. Moving on now here to the Philadelphia Phillies. According to DraftKings, they're set at 80.5 wins. Peter, what do you think?
So I like the over 80.5 wins. I like Bryce Harper. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. And they signed Didi Gregorius. So I think he's pretty good. It'll help a little bit.
Nate?
I like a slight over on this one. I'd say somewhere around 500, maybe a little bit over 500. But I just don't really see much in this team in the pitching end besides Aaron Nola. So I'm going to take slight over, but they'll be around 500.
Yeah, so the Phillies are a very interesting. I think they're a really intriguing team. Obviously, they've had a down year. I think there's some major question marks in terms of their rotation and their bullpen. But then you look at it and you're like, okay, maybe they can put it all together and they can really make a run at the end at least. And 80.5 seems really low. Like, according to DraftKings, they have under 500. I don't think their roster, I understand the pitching woes, but I don't think their roster is an under 500 roster. I think at the minimum they can win 82, 83 games. I'm going to take the over here. Moving on now to the Miami Marlins. According to DraftKings, it's set at 70.5 wins. Peter, what do you think?
So I like the under on that team. I think since last year they made the playoffs, obviously, but COVID was a huge factor in that. I think they're going to return back to earth and not be as bad as they were, obviously, in like the past few years, because nobody can be that bad, except for the Pirates this year. But I think they're going to be pretty bad.
Nate?
I'm going to take a slight over on this one. I don't think that they're really bad anymore. They have Sixto Sanchez, good pitcher for them. They kind of broke out last year, a couple of decent prospects. I feel like that they'll be somewhere in the 70s, slightly over this. So I'd take the over.
So I'm going to take the under here. I don't love taking the under here, but I think those top four teams in the NL East are going to be very competitive. So I'm going to take the under just due to the competition factor. I think they're probably going to win, 68, 69 games. But the Marlins, I believe, are heading in the right direction. But just with that division's going to be tough, and I think they're going to end up faltering. I think that run they went on last year was due to COVID. I think they caught some breaks, but then I guess you could make the argument, well, they were the first team in sports to really get hit with COVID. I think like 30 out of their 40 guys in their 40-man roster had it at that one time, and they really battled through it, and they ended up making the playoffs, So I just don't see it this year. I'm going to take the under. Now we're going to go to the New York Mets.
Main event.
The main event, Nate's Mets. So we're going to save Nate's one for last. According to DraftKings, the Mets win total is set at 90.5. Peter, thoughts?
Sorry, Nate. I like the slight under. I just don't think they'll stay healthy. They got to prove it to me once that they can all stay healthy. But I love DeGrom, love Syndergaard. I love that trade of Lindor. They've got amazing pieces around them. I just think that team's going to be a little fall short. But I think they're a really good team anyway, and they'll be vying for the top spot with the Braves.
I'm going to take the over here slightly. I'm not in love with it. Again, just because of the competition in the NL East, I think that's a factor here, but I'm going to take the slight over. It's set at 90.5. I think the Mets can win 92 games. If they can stay healthy, obviously the addition of Lindor will help the offense. I think their pitching staff is arguably the best in the MLB, or maybe not the best, but I think you can make it the case they're either second or third best in the Major League Baseball. I think the bullpen's better. I like the over. I think they're probably going to win about 92, 93. Nate, Mets over or under 90.5?
I'll take the slight over on this one, too. I really like what the Mets have done in the offseason. They really solidified their pitching depth. They have a huge amount of depth in the bullpen and in the rotation. They really solidified their lineup as well. They finally have a real catcher for the first time that I've ever seen as a Mets fan. James McCann's the best catcher I've ever seen by far. There's no question about that. And that's kind of sad. And then, of course, there's Francisco Lindor, which is the greatest acquisition I've ever seen as a Mets fan. So I think I'm taking the slight over on this one. They're a much better team from top to bottom that they've had in a while. They have a lot of depth. So I take the over on this one somewhere in the mid-90s, probably somewhere around where you said, Pombo.
Okay, so now we're going to talk about odds to win the division. According to DraftKings, the Braves are actually favored to win the division at plus 120. Then it is the Mets at plus 140. Then it's the Nationals at plus 600. The Phillies at plus 875. And then the Marlins at plus 2,500. So, Peter, what's your pick to win the division? And if you have a value pick?
So I like the Mets at plus 140. I just think they have a really, really good team. And I love that Lindor acquisition. But I'm going to bet this in real life. Nationals plus 600. I think that's a lot of odds for amount of talent that's on that team.
When we're talking about the NL East, we've said it. We've hit it the last 5-10 minutes. It's going to be competitive. So the Braves favored at plus 120. And my pick to win the division is the Mets at plus 140. But I don't think I bet on that in real life. I think just due to the competition in the NL East, I think there's some serious value at other spots. I think the Nationals at plus 600 is good value. And I think when it comes to value, I like them. But I think the Mets do win the division at plus 140. But the value there for the Mets isn't as good. I think if the Mets were at plus 200, plus 250, I'd pound the table more. But just the plus 140 scares me just a little bit. Nate, who's your take to win the division?
Yeah, I agree with you guys on the Mets with plus 140. I also like the value with the Nationals at plus 600. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think it's going to be the Mets that win this division. As I said, they just have a lot more depth than they've had in a very long time. And they're seeing more competent than they've ever been. So I feel like the usual trope of them, it comes down to injuries. If they don't get injured, then they'll be everything needs to click. I think we're kind of past that. I feel like that the tides have changed and the Mets are going to be the greatest team in the history of baseball.
Playoffs for sure,
I'm
right?
kidding
Nate?
about that. I'm kidding about that.
Playoffs for sure, though, right, Nate?
Yeah, playoffs for sure.
So Nate,
about that last take, but no, yeah, definitely Mets plus 140.
So obviously with you being a Mets fan, what is the bar for the Mets in 2021? Is it a playoff appearance? Is it a division winner? What is the bar? What is the bare minimum?
For me, I'd say without question, it's a playoff berth. Because
Okay,
the last time that they've been to the playoffs was 2016 as a wild card. Obviously, the year before that, they went to the World Series and lost. Before that, the last time that they went to the playoffs was 2006. The Mets just don't go to the playoffs a lot. They just don't. So I feel like first year with Cohen, he brought in Lindor. Everything was going on and whatnot. They at least have to go to the playoffs. So rather it's a wild card, National League East division.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. I think if they don't make the playoffs whether it's a wild card berth, a division crown, I think it's ultimately a failure unless there's some unseen circumstances.
Lindor breaks his leg game one of the season.
If Lindor gets hurt and DeGrom gets hurt, then that's one thing. But other than that, I think they should be a playoff team. So those are our predictions for the National League side. Next week, we're going to transition to the American League side. Peter, Nate, you guys have any final thoughts before we wrap up?
Nate, thanks for coming on the podcast. You're always welcome here.
Thank you guys for having me on. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Nate. We're glad to have you because you always have people on your podcast. We'd figured we'd repay the favor.
And we're always going to have you on. During baseball season, you're going to be on a ton.
As with you guys on mine. If the Red Sox trade for, let's say, I don't know, Javier Baez, you both are going to be on my podcast.
Let's go.
Thanks, Nate. And Nate, since you're not going to be on our show next week because we're going to transition to the American League side, we're actually going to have the person that does our graphics, Matt Cooney, is going to be on for the American League side.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, a good man. So, Nate, who's coming out of the National League? Me and Peter aren't going to give our picks yet, but who do you have coming out of the National League?
I have the Padres coming out in the National League. I feel like that team from top to bottom, I feel like that they're really, really good. They're young and they're hungry. We saw it this year. I feel like that they're going to play the Dodgers, and probably the divisional series is one of those teams, and that division will be a wild card team. I think it's going to be the Padres all the way. I don't feel like anyone can stop them.
All right, Nate. Thank you very much.
Wait, who do you like in the American side?
American side, I would say.
If he says the Yankees, kick him out.
Oh, hell no. Not the Yankees.
I bet.
I would have to probably say the White Sox.
Wow.
Nate's really high on the White Sox. If we had him on next week, he would like Nate's a big Nate's really high on the White Sox. He really is.
I love him. Tim Anderson's the most underrated player in the sport.
You heard it here from Big Nate here. All right, guys. Thank you all. Peter, thank you very much, as usual. Nate, thank you again. We'll be sure to see you very soon. So thank you all for listening. Next week, we're going to hit on the American League side of things. We're going to have Matthew Cooney on, so big show ahead. For all the Red Sox fans out there, we're going to give the over-under totals for the Boston Red Sox and those New York Yankees, so be sure to catch it. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Let's go, Mets.
Stay hot.